guys, welcome back to another video. Today will be true horror stories. If you want a part 2 to this video, hit that like button and show me in the comments. And there'll be a link to the story in the description below. With that being said, let's get straight into it.
Hey, it's Crippled. Don't judge the gameplay. I was really scared, not gonna lie.
Our first story is, my sleep paralysis demon is actually a pretty chill guy. My first memory of sleep paralysis happened when I was only 10 years old. I remember it because it was the night my parents took me to see Shrek 2, for getting good marks in my report card. It was an evening show, so we got in late, and my mum took me straight into bed when we got home. It was around 4 AM. When I woke up, the light from my alarm clock told me that much. I couldn't feel anything, not my pajamas against my skin, or the warmth of my head against the pillow. I could feel my arms and legs, but they felt heavy, as if there were a great weight holding them down. I tried to call out, but I couldn't. My voice caught in my throat, my lips unable to move. I mustered a weak groan that sounded like a cross between a frog's croak and a zombie's moan. That was it. I thought I was dead, that this is what death felt like. Being awake, but unable to move or tell anyone, my mind wrestled with the idea of being placed in a coffin, unable to tell anyone that I was still alive in here, unable to move or say anything as the lid closed and they put me in the ground, still alive. My fear subsided as I felt my heart thudding in my chest in response to my near panic attack. I also became aware of my breath, which slowed as fear subsided. I calmed a little, thinking it was just a dream. That was when I saw him for the first time. Mr. Brownstick Legs. He huddled in the corner of the room by my closet, his two oversized red eyes glowing in the dark of my bedroom. His face was like a porcelain mask, white, expressionless, with no mouth or nose, only those two haunting red eyes. When he stood up, his body unfolded like origami until his head reached the ceiling. His neck bent, tilting forward as his true height was greater than the height of my room. His long black torso was covered by shimmering symbols that reflected red in the light of his glowing eyes. He stood on two spindly, thin legs that disappeared into the shadow of my room. He made no noise as he moved, seeming to glide as he hovered closer to my bed, his long, thin arms reaching down to me as I moaned through my paralyzed lips. I could not scream, I very much wanted to. His fingers reached through the darkness down to my face. Two pointed fingers touched against my eyelid, pushing them closed. I remember his fingertips feeling cold, but not cold. Even though the ends of his fingers looked sharp, his touch was gentle. "Do not struggle, little one. Sleep, sleep," he said. His voice was so deep I could feel it in my chest when he spoke. I did as instructed, convincing myself that it was indeed a dream. Even if it wasn't, the back of my eyelids were more reassuring to look at than those red, piercing eyes in his vacant mask of a face. I closed my eyes, wanting it to be a dream, willing it to be a dream. I woke up the next morning, thankfully able to move, walk, and talk. I explained what I saw to my parents, who both agreed that it was a dream. My mum tried floating the idea that something from Shrek 2 scared me, but neither my dad or I bought it. For confirming, Dad asked that I draw a picture of what I saw for them. As I was drawing, I ran out of black crayon and had to finish his legs with the next darkest color in my crayon box. "Hey there, Mr. Brown Sticky Legs," my dad said as I handed him the drawing. "You leave my daughter alone now, you hear?" This is how my sleep paralysis demon ended up with the name Mr. Brown Sticky Legs. Giving him a silly name helped take some of the edge off of going to the bed the following night. My dad even did a sweep of the room, calling out for him. "Here, Mr. Brown Sticky Legs," he said, whistling as if he were calling a dog. It made me giggle, and the whole episode felt more fun than scary. But once they took me in and turned off the light, I felt the dread creeping back in. Darkness hits harder when you expect to find something lurking in the shadow. I don't know how long I searched, but I eventually fell asleep. In the weeks following, I searched for Mr. Brown's Sticky Legs every night as I fell asleep. Even when I went to sleepovers, I would do a courtesy check in case he tagged along to a friend's house. As time passed, my searches became less frequent. It was a couple months later, the night before my first day of 5th grade, when I woke up to Mr. Brown's sticky legs straddled over my bed, his empty plate of a face inches up from my own. A scream struck my throat, coming out sounding like a gush of air released from a pool float. "Hush, child," he said. His voice was deep, echoless. I didn't know how he spoke without a mouth, but I heard him. I saw that he held a piece of paper in his thin fingers, crumpled on the edge and torn. He held it up to show me. On the page was a pink blob with blue dots for eyes, and droll red smile, and stick lines for legs and arms. It was lying on a blue rectangle. "I found the picture you drew of me, so I drew a picture of you," he said. "Do you like it?" I tried nodding, but I couldn't move. I tried answering, but all that came out was a dry, croaking sound. "Will you draw another one for me? I so like the first one. You gave me pants. I look good in pants." Again, I was unable to respond or move to give him an answer. He must have been able to read my intent, because he tucked the picture under the pillow before closing my eyes again. When I woke up in the morning, I bolted upright and tossed my pillow off the bed. My heart leaped into my throat when I found the picture. It wasn't a dream. He was real. I went to my desk and began drawing a picture for him, starting with his face and eyes, trying to capture as much detail as I could remember. I had forgotten all about the first day of school until my mom opened the door and found me still in my pajamas. "Lexi!" she yelled, startling me as I was colouring in his eyes. "Your bus will be here in less than an hour. Get dressed, now!" I tucked my picture into my school backpack and got dressed. I finished my drawing at recess that day, using my brand new Crayola 64 pack that I got in my back to school supplies. I gave him blue pants this time, figuring he'd like to see himself in jeans. I wrote his name, Mr. Brown Stick Legs, at the bottom of the picture and drew a smiley face next to it, hoping he'd like the nickname. I flipped the paper over to write him a message on the back. I wanted to ask him questions, but didn't want to anger him since he visited me when I was at my most vulnerable. I wrote out my letter on a separate piece of paper before copying over to the back of my picture. "Dear Mr. Brown Sticky Legs," that's your name. "My name is Lexi. I am in 5th grade. What is your name? How old are you? Do you go to school? Why do you visit my bedroom? Why can't I move when you visit? You look scary, but you also seem nice. I hope you can be friends. Love, Lexi. P.S. I hope you like your blue pants." I added another smiley face at the end of the letter, my final emphasis on wanting to be friends. I considered closing with sincerely, but I figured love was better. I took the picture under my pillow that night, how anxious to see him rather than fill with dread of his reappearance. But like that last night, he did not return the next day, or the day after. The days stretched into weeks, and every morning I found the picture tucked under my pillow from the night before. It wasn't until Thanksgiving break that I saw him again. My eyes opened as the morning sun poked through the blinds into my bedroom. His body didn't look any different in the light. In fact, his black skin seemed darker, absorbing the sun rays without giving anything back. His eyes seemed wider than before. If he had a mouth, I would have figured he was smiling. In his slender fingers was the picture I drew for him. "Hello, Lexi," he said. "Thank you for the picture. I do look good in blue pants." I wanted to smile, but, well, sleep paralysis. He flipped the picture over to the side with my letter. "I will answer your question the best I can. I do not have a name, not one you could ever pronounce, but I am happy for you to call me Mr. Brown Stick Legs. As for my age, I exist outside of the construct of time, therefore I am ageless. I do not go to school, nor do I know what school is. Why do I visit you? I visit to feed on the energy of your soul." My breath quickened as mute groan exited my teeth. I wanted to run, wanted to get away from him, but I was pinned down, unable to move. He sensed my uneasiness and tried to calm me down by patting my forehead. "Let me explain. Have you been to the ocean? It appears vast, almost limitless as you stare out into the blue water with no visible land on the other side. In my mind, I was standing on a beach. I felt the salty ocean breeze against my face as I looked out over the massive body of water. The waves crashed at my feet. I felt the rush of water over them, followed by a trickle of sand and pebbles as the water drew back. Your soul is like the ocean, child, vast, limitless, undefinable, by word of to your understanding. I take only a tiny sip, a single glass of water from a vast ocean. I am not one who could consume an entire ocean. Dark clouds formed over the water as I stared at white-capped waves. The clouds unleashed a heavy downpour, turning the horizon grey as rain fell from the sky over the ocean. Just as the rain falls over the ocean, your soul can replenish itself by more than I could ever consume. Not even in 1,000 of your years does that make you feel better. On the beach, in my mind's vision, I nodded. In my bedroom, he nodded back at me. Good. As for your last question, why you cannot move? We are meeting at a point outside of your time. When your world and mine touch, your physical body cannot move here, but if you persist, you can learn to speak with me with your mind, and I will answer your questions in exchange for your drawings. You can draw pictures of whatever you like. I want to know more about your world. In my mind, I nodded again. This knowledge is a gift. We can understand one another more. I am not one who would hurt you. He pressed his finger to my eyelid again, closing them in my mind's eye. I was still on the beach, but the sun was setting, and no stars were visible through the rain. I drifted back to sleep to the sound of falling rain. The next morning I asked my parents for a sketchbook and colouring pencils. They tried to hold me off until Christmas, but since I spent most of my afternoons and weekends drawing pictures up in my room, they let me open one of my gifts a week early. A sketchbook with 100 pages with 50 pack of Crayola coloured pencils. I started by drawing the rest of my family, Mom, Dad, my little brother Tommy, our cat Libby, and even though he had died, our dog Pancakes. Next I drew our house, then our car, then my school. I kept drawing anything I could think of, trees, birds, insects, until my sketchbook was full. I used my allowance to purchase more books so I could keep drawing. I honed my craft, redoing my early drawings in greater detail. My thoughts considered his wording. I am not one who would consume an entire ocean. I wanted to ask him if there were those who could, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to know such things. Mr. Brown Sticklegs didn't return until my freshman year of high school. To him, it wasn't like any time he had passed. I read up on lucid dreaming in the time between visits, so that when he would return, I would be better capable of talking to him. He held my book in his hand, flipping through my drawings, dotting over the increased refinement of my drawing skills. I had filled a dozen sketch pads and upgraded from Crayola to Prismacolor premium pencils for my drawing. His biggest surprise was when he complimented my drawing. "Thank you," I said, seeing the words in my mind as I spoke them aloud. If he had a surprised expression, his eyes showed it. "You have been very busy, child," he said. "Do you have any questions you would like to ask?" I hesitated, but finally formed the words in my mind. "Are there creatures who can consume an entire ocean?" He didn't respond right away, which made me think I had not asked properly. As I asked him a second time, he put a finger to my lips as if to shush me. "There are those who can. They are known as the Dark Ones. They are capable of consuming entire souls, emptying them out, leaving them dry and barren. You should not fear them, but you should also not provoke them." His eyes curved downwards, as if concerned or afraid. "What do they look like?" I asked. In my mind, my visions were filled with images of great, terrifying creatures. Spiders taller than the Empire State Building, on thin, spindly legs of shadow and smoke. Ghastly flying creatures that knocked over orchards and forests with the beat of their leathery wings. "I showed you only because you asked," Mr. Brown Sticky Legs said, "but it is best we do not talk or think about them. Let them be." I nodded my head. He leaned forward and pressed his plate-like face onto my head as if he would kiss me on my forehead, which was odd since he didn't have a mouth. Then, as usual, he closed my eyes and I drifted back to sleep. My life took a downturn during the later years of high school. My dad lost his job, and when the search for a new one dragged on, he turned to drinking to cope with his failures. He wasn't abusive, but he wasn't fun to be around either. In the months following, my parents would hush their arguing when I entered my room, greeting me with smiles as if nothing were wrong. That lasted until the day I came home from school to them, fighting over a foreclosed notice from the bank. We moved out over a weekend from our house in the suburbs to an apartment on the other side of town. This is where I'm going to end off the video. If you liked today's episode, hit the like button, subscribe if you want a part 2. And with that being said, goodbye.